The Linguistics Olympiad, international competition to solve linguistics puzzles. It's a fun way to do linguistics. I think it's attracting some people that even don't know anything about linguistics and just enjoy puzzles. Because a lot of these puzzles, they're not even really about language in any definite way. They're really puzzles in a sense that kind of like math puzzles, looking for logic, looking for patterns, looking for order, and they really are a fun way to introduce people to the ideas of language and linguistics, and they're just fun on their own. So here we have the International Linguistics Olympiad, ILO, although it's IOL. Well, there it is, IOL. And this is the leading international competition, just like the Olympics. But you can also find local versions of this that feed into it, like there's NACLO, the North American Computational Linguistics Olympiad. There's a UCLO for the UK, and there's AUSCLO for Australia and New Zealand, and some others as well. So the idea is that, it's kind of like an exam, really. I mean, you write it, you go in there and write the test. It's popular with high schools, and you go in there, write the test, and the highest performers in the open competition, they go on to an invitational competition, and then the highest performers in the invitational competition get invited to form national teams that then compete in the Olympics. And there are team results for the different countries. So really trying to bring kind of like an Olympic style of competition into linguistics. Anyway, you can look into it more at this website, ioling.org. But for now, I want to just show some of these, one of these sample problems. So here we have, if we go under problems, you can see samples. Now, by the way, they call them problems. I think we have enough problems. We don't need to call them problems. I prefer to call them puzzles. Sometimes it feels a bit forced to try to say puzzles instead of problems, but these are like, why would you volunteer to give yourself more problems? You don't need more problems, but hey, we could all enjoy a few more puzzles. So here we go. Starting with, you can actually look at the past Olympiads and the full sets, but the starting place would be these samples. So they're kind of like a simplified form and just like a good introduction. So they start with the easy problems, and some of these can get really tricky. Some of these can be some pretty nasty, complex patterns that are hard to pick up. But let's start at the easy end. So you can download the problems or the puzzles. And so here we have puzzle number 1 is Georgian countries. Okay, so let's see the problem here. You see I have a hard time not calling them problems, even though I try not to. So, okay, names of countries in South America. Now, so here we have 3 countries, and we have Georgian language. Look at this. This is really quite a cool writing system. I mean, it kind of looks like Tolkien's Elvish a little bit. Very cool letters, very different from most other writing systems. It really stands out, this Georgian writing system. Now, of course, this problem is assuming that you're not Georgian and you don't know the Georgian alphabet. Here you can see there's simply a matter of matching up the Georgian word with the English translation, with the added clue that these are countries in South America. Well, there's not that many countries in South America. What is there, like 15 or so? So it's a pretty small number. So we know that these 2 mystery countries are going to be chosen from a very small list. So already we see, even though we only have a small amount of information, we don't need that much information to actually solve this. We just need to have enough of a clue to fill in a few blanks so that there's only one possible remaining answer for each of these. So as with a lot of these puzzles, like, and this is why it's kind of like, it's a lot like a math puzzle or any other kind of puzzle. Like, even if you abstract away the language and linguistics aspects, you're just looking for patterns. You're looking for things that match. So just like with any kind of code breaking, which is a whole fun field on its own, the field of code breaking, like one of the main principles is to look for things that repeat. Anything that repeats is a big clue. And so you look for any kind of repeating patterns here. And here, well, the first thing that stands out to me is you have this thing that kind of looks like, sort of like a curvy M with a line on top, or you can say a sideways three with a tail. This letter appears in the first, second, and third word, and also notice where it appears. Here it appears to be the second letter in Brazil. And there it is, an R. Right now here it's the third letter in Peru. Well, that's also an R. So that's already looking very good. And then we see here in Uruguay that we have another R there, so in this same position. So that symbol is very nicely lining up with the letter R. So we have, I'm going to open up a notes file here, because this is something that when you're solving these, it's definitely good to be taking notes for any kind of cryptography like this. You really want to be taking notes. So I'm going to zoom in here, and now I can open up here. So we have our two mysteries. So I'm going to count the symbols here for these two mystery words. So it's 1, 2, 3. So I have 9 letters for the first one and 8 for the second one. And by the way, with all this, like, you always have to be ready to re-evaluate and reanalyze whatever solution you come up with, because there could be surprises. Like, most languages in the world, they are written from left to right, but there are several that are written from right to left. So that's always a possibility. And also the idea of what we consider to be a separate letter. What in English are considered separate letters, in other languages, maybe you'd have 2 or 3 of them that could all be written as one letter. And we have in English, we have sounds like TH and SH, that those represent single sounds, even though they're written with 2 letters. And even our idea of how we divide up these letters, they seem to, we can count the number of separate squiggles here, and that appear to be separated. And then we can count letters that way. But it's certainly not a guarantee that that's how the letters are going to be considered. Like, we have things like, even if you have like a letter I that has a dot on top, is that dot part of the letter? Is it another letter? No. Okay, so, and so on. But with all those caveats in mind, we still start with the simplest possible explanation, which is good in general, and just go for the simplest possible explanation until you're forced to think of things differently. So starting with this idea that funny squiggle M with a tail, that's the letter R, we now see that in these 2 words at the bottom, we have the second letter is an R. But I'm going to change these to small x's because it's easy to see. It's easy to make the discovered letters stand out. So here we have an R in the second position. And there I thought there was going to be one in the second one, but it's different. It doesn't have the tail, or it has a different kind of tail. So that same letter is not there. Okay, but this is countries in South America. So I'm seeing second letter R. I'm already thinking Argentina. that's probably what it is. But let's get some more information. So what else do we see matching? Well, here's one. For Uruguay, you can see that we have this R here at the beginning of Uruguay. We also have this, what appears to be the same letter both before and after the R. So that looks like a good candidate for a U. And also there we see it at the end of Peru as well. So very good candidate for the U. And so I think that's enough to fill it in. And with a lot of these puzzles, you don't need to be 100%. I mean, this is pretty close to 100%. I mean, you can see clearly that's a U, but you don't have to be 100% certain. Like once you have a guess, when any kind of puzzle where you're trying to break a code or fill in a pattern, you just need a guess. You just need something that might work, and then you can try it. So here we put in the U. It looks like that is the fourth letter in the second country, that it gets a U. Okay. So, what's that? Trying to think of my South American countries. Okay. Next, what I find with a lot of these kind of code breaking and pattern figuring puzzles is often the first clue is the hardest. The first step is the hardest. Once you get an idea, it's almost like it's a handle that gets you into the puzzle, so that then often one clue leads to more. So we had started with the R was the first thing that stood out. Next was the U. Now that leads, it's like a cascade where like you have one pattern found, and then that reveals another pattern, and then it accelerates. It's a very accelerating curve from like the beginning of a puzzle looking like a blank wall to once you start to find that first piece of the pattern, it leads to another, and then another increasingly, and you have a cascade of patterns until everything is revealed. That's part of the the satisfying feeling of solving a puzzle. So here with the U, we've got the R, and then we got the U, and that leads to Peru having an RU at the end. So that already, since we know that this is Peru and this is RU, I mean this has to be a P and an E or something very close to that. So we can already see a P. So let's look for the P here, and we see that, I almost look at that first one. Now that looks similar. I'm going to watch out for those similar letters. I mean, we have that in English as well. Like, we're so used to it, but, could imagine something like, a capital C, capital G. That could look pretty similar. And in fact, they used to be the same letter long ago. So the things like a P, a P versus a Q, or a B versus a D, like we're used to seeing them being different, but that can be confusing. But it looks like this is clearly a separate letter. It's not the same P. And in fact, I'm not seeing any P's in these answers. Okay, no P's. So let's go on to the next one. We see the E. This looks like an E here. Do we see it? Look here. So here we have in the fourth letter of the first word, we have an E. So again, clearly we are getting Argentina. Again, that's screaming Argentina. So that's the E. And so now we've cleared Peru, all the information we can get from it. And there's no E's or P's in any of these other names. So that kind of brings things to a halt. But already there's enough. We just look for another, it's like the cascade ends, right? Because we got the R and the U, and then that led to the rest of Peru. So we apply the P and the E, but only one E applies, and that's it. There's no P, and it doesn't lead to anything in the other countries. So we move on to another opening. So one way we could go is we could take the B here at the beginning of Brazil. We know this is an R, so that's going to be a B. Although we do notice interesting that we see 6 letters in Brazil, and this is 8 letters. So of course you can see in different languages the names of countries could be different. That's a clue that that could be the same thing down here. There could be a different version of the country name. But let's take this as a B. Okay, so we apply that first one as a B, and we can see, oh, we have one down here, the third to last in the second country. You can fill that in as a B. Now I probably, well, it's got to be Colombia. Although, of course, in English, that is an O, Colombia. But again, seeing those 8 letters in the word Brazil made me, reminded me that, oh yeah, this language could be spelling things a bit differently. It's going to be recognizably Colombia, but it doesn't have to be the same. You know, so I was feeling all clever because I know that the country Colombia has no U in it, it's an O, and that's a common spelling mistake. So, you know, I feel clever, but then no, that actually tricked me because I thought this wasn't Colombia because that's not an O, but in fact it still could be. And okay, so that's the only B, the only one that matches there. Okay, so let's go on to, well, how about this A here? Okay, so if this is Bra, is in Brazil, then you get this little squiggle for an A. And you also see it there for Uruguay, so the 2 A's there. That's promising. And what do we have here? Last letter A, last letter A. So again, Argentina, Colombia is well supported, but okay, next one we have, this would be a Z or something like a Z, but there's no match. Now this, if this is Brazil, then this would be the E or the I sound, the E sound or the letter I. So here, and then also matches for Uruguay. Again, so you see an issue where Uruguay, here this is written in English with the letter Y, but here, you know, it also is the same letter used for the I in Brazil. And this is where a lot of these puzzles, you know, they do bring in a little bit of linguistics. They have like, even though you can approach these as like a pure math puzzle, almost like they around the edges, they bring in linguistics concepts, and they take you to the edge of linguistic territory where you can look into linguistic concepts. Like, why is it that the letter Y and the letter I, you know, they can be written with the same letter? I mean, literally, if you wrote the word Uruguay, if you wrote an I there, you would still pronounce it Uruguay. So there's a certain closeness with those 2 letters. So now if you apply this as an I, we can see here, there it is, just in there, the I in Argentina, and the IA for Colombia. So really at this point, like, if you know, okay, it's a South American country that ends in BIA, it's got to be Colombia. So you already have the answer. Like you don't need to continue. You have enough. And, you know, and if you're racing and if you're trying to really, for these actual Olympiad exams, like, you have a lot to go through within the time limit. So if you have a clear enough guess, you can just complete it and move on. And considering the fact that this is, because they gave such a strong narrowing clue that these are countries in South America, you already can be very confident in answering these. But if they didn't give that clue, it would certainly take more information to be sure what these are. So if we then get, well, let's get the L here. So this is Brazil, the L, and of course that matches the L here in Colombia. And this is IA. So this is, you can see that we've seen this already as the E or the I or the Y, and this is the A. So this is Brasilia. That's common. Many countries don't, many languages don't really like ending words with a consonant like L. They like to have vowels at the end. Not sure if that's always the case with Georgian, but in this case they didn't like Brazil, didn't sound quite right. They liked it Brasilia. Okay, so, and even in the Portuguese language, the name, the country Brazil is pronounced Brasil. It almost ends with an oo sound, with like a vowel there. They also don't like ending with the consonant L. They kind of say it as an oo. It's Brazil. So that's a common thing you'll see. And so that little twist there, these are the little twists that make the Linguistics Olympiad a little bit different than like a pure kind of math puzzle competition. Because in math, it's pure and exact. Your answers are precise and exact and absolutely logical. But when you're dealing with language, even though it's mostly following patterns and logic, there's kind of a fuzzy logic element to it. There's a variation and an uncertainty and sort of an arbitrary distribution of different possibilities, because humans are involved here. It's like language is in kind of a gray area between this kind of abstract mathematical logical thing and something that's just practical and everyday. So yeah, you have this word in English, Brazil, and in Georgian it's Brasilia, and that's totally fine. So the pattern it introduces, you could say noise is introduced into the pattern. That's one way to describe it. Okay, so that completes all the information we can get from Brazil and Peru. So the only information we have left to deal with is for Uruguay. So here we have URU. Now we have this G. Almost looks sort of like an upside down backwards G. And so here that matches with the G in Argentina. So we can fill that in. And the M looks a little bit like it, but not exactly. Okay, then we have Urugu. Well, it's interesting that we have 3 U's in the English, but in the Georgian we have the 2 U's, and then this is something different. It's not a U, or at least it's a different. Maybe this is the W then, because U and W are very close, so this could be Uruguay. And that's really how we pronounce it, because when we say this word, we pronounce these first 2 U's as U, and the third U is pronounced as a W, as a W, W, gua. So this really could be the difference between a U and a W. Here we do not see any W's or anything else there. And then we have I at the end, so it's I. Okay. So we see here is the I. This is the IA. Brasilia, Uruguay. And that's all the information we have. And so based on that, from this, we can solve the puzzle, which was already solved maybe 15 minutes ago from just getting a few letters. But I wanted to show getting as much information as possible out of the available information. This is what's available, and the answer is clear. So that is how you do the very first of the sample introduction puzzles to the Linguistics Olympiad.